welcome to the 209 podcast. Everyone here, I'm the better host, Aster. And today we have a very special guest. We have a founding member of the Modesto's first children's museum and artistic genius who paved the way for innovation in our small little city. Please, everyone, welcome Chelsie Webster.
Hello, thanks for having me.
How's you been?
I've been great. It's been a busy couple of days, and it's always busy here at the museum in the springtime because that's when we get lots of field trips and lots of people visiting over spring break. But it's good. It's good busy.
Good ambiance.
Yeah,
very
totally.
uplifting.
Yeah.
Good business.
Exactly. We love when people are visiting the Children's Museum. It means that they are appreciating what we built here. So it's a wonderful thing.
That's great to hear. So if you'd like, would you like to give like a short little summary about what you think of yourself, especially given that you've been a major part in starting such a big foundation in the city?
Yeah, totally. So I can tell you a little bit about my history. So I actually started my career working in a science museum, which was actually in Ohio. So I am not from here. I'm not from the 209, but I'm learning a lot about the 209. But I started my career at a science museum that's very similar to the Exploratorium. So if you've been to the Exploratorium out in the Bay Area, this science museum is called COSI. And my job there was kind of a crazy one. It was to drive around in a big box truck and do science shows for kids at schools across Ohio. So it was like this crazy, I was like somewhere between a Justin Bieber traveling band and Bill Nye the Science Guy. So like something in between there. So that was my first job in museums, and I fell in love with doing work inside of museums. And so I was lucky enough to gain some responsibility, and through a lot of, very different jobs, I ended up learning about the museum and the people here in Modesto that were starting this children's museum. And I got the opportunity to come out and join the team as the CEO of the museum and help to build the museum. I moved to Modesto about 6 months before we opened the Children's Museum. So I was here and helped to sort of finish up the construction project, but then hire all the amazing people that work here and build all the process and all the stuff that goes into actually running a children's museum, and then help to open the doors. And then we've been running at full steam ever since. So that's a little bit about how I came to be in the 209, but I'm so new. I think I've only been here 2 years exactly, like almost to the day. So,
nearly hit the anniversary.
Yeah, exactly. I think my anniversary is like early March, so we're right around there. So I'm still like discovering new places and learning all the things that people like to do in Modesto and in the Central Valley. But I think the Children's Museum is a really cool addition to the Central Valley. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're still getting adjusted to life in Modesto, life in the 209.
Totally.
How do you feel that Modesto has treated you, kind of welcomed you, in a sense, to the community?
So Modesto is really unique. It feels a lot, so it's very familiar to me as a Midwesterner. So I don't know if you know much about Midwest culture, but Midwest people are very, very chatty, very smiley, very friendly. We are very much known for, if you bump into me, I'll say I'm sorry. It's a little bit of that like very friendly community kind of culture. And, the West Coast to us Midwesterners is a very scary place because we hear that the West Coast are just like cool kids that, know all the cool trends. But what was really interesting when I moved here to Modesto, I actually felt really at home because I feel like Modesto has a lot of the same values of the Midwest where it's very community driven and people care a lot about the other people in their community. So there's a lot of that very collaborative energy and a lot of people that, when they heard I moved to town, they wanted to give me a recommendation list of all their favorite places and they wanted to invite me out to dinner and show me this new restaurant that's just opened. And so there's a lot of that was really interesting to me because I was like, oh, this is not what I expected when I moved to the West Coast. It's very, very warm in a way that, the reputation of the West Coast might not get that reputation, but Modesto is that way. And other, beyond that, there's sort of this really cool energy about Modesto where there's There's like a really neat art scene here. And I feel like there's a lot of people doing a lot of cool new things in Modesto that, even in just 2 years, I've seen so many new coffee shops and restaurants open, even just different things going on with different artists, collaborative groups, and cool shows that are being put on, and really cool community events. And so there's just a lot that is really unique about Modesto. And I think this children's museum is a good example of that, because this is not something you could get your community to jump in and support in any city, but it can happen here in Modesto because there is such a really energetic community spirit here.
Yeah, especially
exist everywhere.
Especially how new the museum is, how different it is. It's sort of something that's more in bigger cities that you wouldn't like consider Modesto.
Totally. And that's something that we actually strive to be. We talked a lot about, when I first moved here, there was a little bit of this like hangover narrative that people would talk about. Oh, well, this is good enough for the Central Valley, or good enough for Modesto, as if, Modesto or the Central Valley deserved less than, the Bay Area or LA or something. So when we were building this museum, we were like, we want this to be world class because Modesto deserves world class. There is no reason why the children in the Central Valley shouldn't have the same kinds of experiences that someone would have in San Francisco or in New York or where I'm from in Columbus, Ohio. There's no reason why we can't be providing that same kind of experience here in the Central Valley. So when you look around at this custom-built, professional, world-class children's museum, that was kind of the reason behind it, is that we think that belongs here in Modesto. And you could probably pick this museum up and put it in any major city, and it would be totally at home there. And we think that Modesto deserves that as well. So that's kind of a big driving force for us, is being the best that we can be, because that's what the Central Valley deserves.
Yeah. And I really like that mentality, especially for a lot of people in Modesto typically grow up in Modesto, and we don't get a lot of those opportunities at a young age.
Yeah.
So seeing something such a big project like this, it really builds enthusiasm in such a small community. For like me and my brother, like we've lived our entire lives in Modesto. We don't know anything else other than Modesto. Everything you want to see is typically in a big city, and big cities are like 2 6-hour drives from us. So having such a convenient location around, and especially something that's so good for our community.
Totally.
It's something really up.
Yes. And that's kind of, we wanted to inspire kiddos to be proud of growing up in Modesto. So you'll note that there's a lot of exhibits in this space that actually are meant to reflect back the city that we live in. So, we've got pictures of Modesto in the Central Valley that cycle through on this page here. There's almond blossoms that come on, our stage here, so kids can act out a performance among the almond blossoms, which are such a
such a Modesto thing.
Yeah. We've got an almond blossom maze over there. We've got, fog in our water lab that's meant to be like the fog of the valley every now and again. And, we've got our Valley Proud grocery store, and we've got the Altamont Pass, which, a lot of kids might have driven through, where all the big windmills are. We've got a little bit of an homage to that upstairs. So, really just trying to bring the Central Valley into our exhibits so that when kids grow up here, they have a sense of pride in both their community, but through sort of the way that they got to play in this museum, they're sort of seeing their community reflected back at them really positively, which before this children's museum might not have been happening very often.
Yeah.
And something else you said, having to travel 2 hours. I don't know if you went on a field trip ever when you were younger, but a lot of times, if kiddos are going on field trips at all, which sometimes they're not, if they're going on a field trip to a museum, they might be on a bus longer than they're even in the museum.
Yeah.
If you're driving to San Jose to go to the museum out there, it takes you 2.5 hours to get there. You could maybe spend an hour and a half at the museum, and then you got to get back on the bus and be on the bus for another 2.5 hours, So that experience is really a big barrier for kiddos getting experiences like this one. And so we've seen a ton of kids using this space as a field trip space. Last year, our first fiscal year, which we were only open for 9 months of that fiscal year, but our first school year, we saw over 11,000 field trippers in this building, which is huge for a building of our size. So we're just seeing so many people get a chance to go on a field trip. And it's a lot of kids' first field trip. It's their first time on a bus. And they get to have that experience because we're so much closer and accessible.
Yeah, there's so much like blockage within our community when it comes to doing so many other fun things.
Totally.
Especially for schools, it's more convenient because they don't have to pay so much to get children all the way to another city.
Totally.
All those expenses.
Exactly.
Some parents may not want their kids to be going that far without them.
Yeah.
So it's really convenient. It's really nice. It's really, like you mentioned, there's so much reflection of our own community within the museum. You mentioned that you could probably plop it anywhere, but I think the fact that we have, like you mentioned, the almond blossoms, all these different things that make it so unique to us specifically, it differs from like any big city. We have so much agriculture. We have so much things to be proud of, even if it's like the fog, even if it's like things that are typically seen as negative in our community. It's something that makes us so unique. And I'm just really proud the fact that the children of this generation are going to have that kind of experience.
Totally.
Are going to be able to, in a couple years from now, remember and reminisce on these kind of first time experiences for them. Like maybe it's their first time going to a museum.
Yes.
And it's something that even if it sparks like, oh, they want to go to other museums, at least this was their introduction to something they might have otherwise not have.
And like it might make them more curious, you know, if they're in the water lab and they are really, really locked into the Lego building with the the water and the Legos.
Yeah.
And that could inspire a career in engineering.
Yeah.
You know, that you don't know what little thing might be the really key interest that gets someone curious, that makes them want to go home and rent a book from the library.
Yeah.
And, you know, follow this curiosity. You know, really all we hope to do when kiddos enter our space is we want them to be creative. We want them to learn critical thinking skills. And then we want them to love learning. You know, we want them to feel joy while learning.
Yeah.
Because that is 99.9% of the battle, right? If you hate learning, it doesn't matter what you're learning about, right?
Yeah.
But if you love learning, it doesn't matter what you're learning about because you love to learn. And so, you know, you might take that spirit and energy into your classroom or into your, you know, your life at home. And you might get curious about the worms in the backyard. And then, you know, you never know what it might be that curiosity sparks. But you have to instill in kids that curiosity and discovery and learning is a joyful experience and something that is motivating for them intrinsically, not extrinsically. It's not something outside of them that motivates them. It's, I want to learn, which is what we do here. We inspire the idea of learning. And my hope is that, you know, we get kiddos, you know, we talk about your generation, you know, those of you that are in high school and college and grew up here and didn't have a place like this as a kid. We hope that there are kiddos now that will get to repeat your experience as an intern here, but they will have grown up being a child in the museum and then maybe a teen volunteer. And then maybe they go on to be an intern and then maybe they go on to work here. And then maybe they go on to do other really cool things in museums, other places. So not only are we creating a new experience for childhood, but we can really try to add unique experiences all the way throughout, you know, being a resident of our city, you know? It's, no matter what age you are, we are trying to engage different people in, you know, finding this experience as something that they can integrate into their lives in some interesting way. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You mentioned earlier that founding the museum, you basically came together with other couples, other people that invited you out to Modesto.
Yes.
How did you get that opportunity?
Great question. So the original founders of this children's museum are three couples. And those three couples, at least one of each of the pairs grew up here in Modesto. So they were all like husband-wife couples, and one of the pair grew up here in Modesto.
Yeah.
And the other of the pair grew up somewhere else. They all moved away at some point, and then they all moved back. And they were all friends here in Modesto and had children. And they were like, I keep having to drive to go do things with my kids. Why can't we have something like that here? So that was sort of the spark that got them going. And they did all of the hard work and brought a bunch of really cool experts on to build the museum and fundraise. And you see on our wall over here, there's, you know, a bunch of people that donated to make this building a reality. So they brought in lots and lots of people. And they had been working from, I think they started in 2019. And I entered the picture much, much later. So they had done so much of the work to get to the place that I sort of entered the picture.
Yeah.
And they brought on a bunch of other founding board members and all these people that were all volunteers. They were just doing this in their free time and on the weekends and at nighttime, which is crazy. But they actually posted a job description online, and I applied for the job like anybody would apply for any job, right?
Yeah.
So when I applied for the job, I was like, that looks cool, helping to open a museum. Like, that's a really cool opportunity. Applied for the job, forgot about it, right? Because when you're applying for jobs, as anybody who's ever applied for jobs, normally you're applying to this job and that job, and you've read a million different job descriptions, and you don't know
Which
what's
is
gonna
which.
stick,
They're all over.
and who's gonna actually call you back. But I was very lucky, and I got selected to be one of the people that they called back, and I started having conversations with them. And from my very first conversation with the then board president, her name is Katie Barber, and she's one of the founders and was the board president at the time, and she's one of the first people I talked to. And we just didn't want to stop talking. We were just so excited about all the things they were doing, and I had a million questions for them. And it felt like our philosophies around what this space should be really, really aligned. And then, of course, they put me through the rigmarole. They wanted to make sure I was the right person. So, I interviewed with lots of people. I talked to them over and over and over again via Zoom, actually. So we were talking, over the computer. And then finally, my last interview, they flew me out here to Modesto, and I got to walk through the space. The first time I walked through the space, there were not floors on the second floor. So there were holes in the floor. There was no paint anywhere. It was, completely a construction site. And they're like, okay, envision right here in the middle, there's this big climbing structure. And so we were using our imagination, but really it was a construction site that I walked through the first time I was here. And I was lucky enough that they decided that I was the right fit for them, and I decided they were the right fit for me. And so I packed up my car and I drove across the country and moved myself out here with my partner, and he and I and 4 cats and a dog all drove across the country. So many plants, all the things. And got a house here, and I started helping to build the museum. But I definitely came in after so much work had been done. And that's kind of the coolest story about this whole museum, is that not a single person, I think, can claim sole, responsibility for bringing it to life.
Yeah.
It is such a collaborative project. And as the CEO of the museum, I often get to be the one that goes out and talks about it. I get to be the one that gets to reap the credit of it a lot of times. But I was very much just one tiny piece of this big group of people that brought this museum to life. And I was lucky enough that I got to bring some folks that I had worked with in other places to come on to the museum as well. So I got to build this really incredible team of people, which is why I think we've done so well, is because all of the people that work here are incredible at their jobs and are just really hardworking, talented people. So I came in, at a really critical moment to help out, but there were just hundreds of people that touched this project in one way or the other to bring it to life. You included. You're one of those people. I know it feels sometimes like small little things, but interns and volunteers, especially in museum spaces, we are a small team of people that has to get by on a really, really, tight budget to make sure that everything that we're doing is for the mission of the work that we do. And so people who volunteer their time to help out, which is what interns are doing, you're volunteering your time to help us accomplish goals, and that time and that energy has such ripple effects throughout the organization. And we have teen volunteers that work with us on the weekends, and your cohort of interns is actually the first intern group we've ever had. So you guys are starting a new program with us as we speak. So there's just all of this stuff that's going on, and every little piece of that is what makes this come to life every single day. So it's a huge team effort.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Yeah. it sounds like really complicated. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of hard work trying to get a project down from nothing to
Yeah.
slowly build it up to something
Totally.
great for our community.
Mhm.
I guess what would you say is such a motivation, especially
Mm.
for you to come all the way from Ohio
Yeah.
to small little Modesto with
Yeah.
given like obviously you're gonna be attached to where you grew up,
Yeah,
where you
sure.
lived.
Well, some of the reason why I was interested in moving here, there's many, many reasons. First and foremost, I'm one of those people that gets very excited about something new. I don't know if it's the ADHD that I have or my inability to sit still. I really love trying something new, and opening a museum is not something I had ever done before, right? That is a very cool project to get to try out. So I knew it would be complicated. I knew it would be difficult. But something that I get very excited about, there's something in education that we talk about called the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development is what are those things that are just outside of your skill set, not something you know how to do yet, but are just right outside of what you currently know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that are going to be the most interesting new things to learn, right?
Yeah.
So, I am not an architect. So if you ask me to draw an architectural, map of this building, I'd be like, I have no idea even where to start. But I had done so many museum things before that while I had never been a CEO and I'd never opened a museum, it was just on the edge of all of those things I had done before. I had a lot of really interesting experiences that made it so opening the museum was maybe the next right challenge for me. It had just enough new stuff with just enough of the stuff that I knew how to do that it was going to be super interesting for me, but I was also capable of doing it, right? So you're trying to find those challenges is a really, it's a sweet spot because you don't want to get in way over your head.
Yeah.
But, so I think that was what was really motivating. It was like, wow, this is a perfect opportunity for me. It's all the things I want to try my hand at, right?
Yeah.
So that was one thing. The other thing is that I have just always been a very adventurous person. And so I have actually always wanted to live away from where I grew up because I just thought it would be an interesting experience. I mean, will I do it forever? I don't know. We'll find out. But at that time, it was something that was exciting to me to be like, I want to live somewhere new. I want to see what it's like to live somewhere new. I've always lived in the same place. That's interesting to me in its own right. And then Modesto itself is just an interesting place. People talk about how central it is to so many things. And I think that's so true. There is just such a rich experience to be had in the Central Valley by being able to, it's right behind us, drive out to Yosemite and spend an afternoon in Yosemite. I cut my Christmas tree down in Yosemite legally. We got a permit to do it. But I was like calling my family at home, like, I just cut my Christmas tree down in the Yosemite National Park. Like, that is just not an experience I could have in Ohio.
Yeah.
So it's just something that was really neat to me to at least try. And my favorite thing about trying new things is that if you hate it, you can go back to the way it was. If I had moved out here and I was like, whoa, this isn't right, you turn the car around and you move back. It's not the end of the world, and no decision is super permanent. So luckily I have really enjoyed living here, but the motivation behind it is really just sort of my own interest in this project, but also just in trying something new and being at the right opportunity and point in my life where that was possible. So
Yeah.
I'm really lucky because my partner has a digital job, so he's not really tied to any building or spot, so he could work from anywhere. And I was lucky enough that it was, a kind of job that supported me in moving across the country. So there were a lot of things that went right. I have a very supportive family that was really excited for me. All of my friends were really excited for me. So, there weren't a lot of barriers in the way for me to do something like that. But I think that, privilege is one of those things that I think about a lot. It makes you feel like you have a safety net. And I'm really lucky that I have a really big safety net. I have a lot of family and friends I even have friends that are family members that live on the West Coast. So I'm like, in an emergency, I could call someone and they could be here in an hour and a half, like they're nearby. So that's that feeling of that safety net also allowed me to take a leap and take a risk, which has paid off because I love it. So it's a really, really great risk that I'm glad I took and an opportunity that was just too good to pass up. So good question.
Well, you mentioned that you've been here basically since almost the beginning, near
Mhm.
the opening.
Yeah.
Been here for a long time, definitely been a part of a lot of projects. What would you say, if you can give like a bit of descriptions about some of the events really central to the museum?
Yeah, great question. So we've done a couple of things, and again, we're in our second year now. We just passed over the 1 year mark, so we're doing things for the second time now, which is way easier than doing them for the first time.
Yeah.
So we've done we have a fundraiser that happens in the fall every year, and it's an adult fundraiser. So we set up bars around the museum and dance parties and all sorts of fun things, and we call it an imagination celebration. This last September, we did the imagination celebration, and we raised money to have a camp scholarship for this summer. So now we are able to offer scholarships to campers for our camp that happens over the summer. So that was a really cool event that we did, that we were able to then raise money for the museum to do other cool stuff. We have an event coming up called the Bike and Trike, which happens on May 31st. So it's coming up very soon, which is a family fundraiser, which is really fun. It was actually one of my favorite days last year. We start right out front of the museum, and everybody brings their bike or scooter or rollerblades or tricycle or whatever it is that you want to get around on.
Yeah.
You bring it down here at the museum, and we all do a big bike parade from here to Roosevelt Park. And then once we get to Roosevelt Park, we have a big kids festival that goes on down there. And there's activities and games and food trucks and, the fire engines that kids can get inside and, touch all the things inside the fire truck and sit in the driver's seat and all the cool stuff. So it's just this really, really fun day that gets kids outside and playing and doing all this fun stuff. And when you participate in that event, you're supporting the museum. So we've got those two really cool events that we're going to do every single year. So we'll have one in the fall and one in the spring. And then we've got lots of other stuff that happens. So we have family programs that happen at the museum. We have camps that happen. We do 18 and up nights, which have a bunch of different activities. We have one coming up at the end of this month, which is our sword, sorcery, and sci-fi. Which I am a big Harry Potter nerd, so I'm very excited about that one. And we've got all sorts of other adult nights. They happen about once a quarter. So lots of just like really cool things. And because we're new, we're trying lots of new stuff all the time. So I'm sure we'll dream up something crazy and new again sometime soon. We just hosted a Netflix character here called Gabby from Gabby's Dollhouse, which was a big day for us. And I didn't know who Gabby was before this. And I learned that she is a big celebrity with like 3 and 4 year olds. So it was a really big day for the kiddos of Modesto. We've just got stuff going on all the time. It feels like trying to think right now we have a matching campaign going on, which just means that a wonderful donor gave us a big sum of money. They gave us $50,000, and they said, if you can raise $50,000, we'll give you $50,000. So we have to go out to the community and say, hey, will you give us $10? And will you give us $10? And will you give us $10? In hopes that every time somebody gives us $10, they give us $10. And we try to get all the way up to $50,000. And so we are, I think are only like $5,000 or $6,000 away. So we are very close right there at the end. And it's really exciting. So we've got like little events like that happen throughout the year that just help to support the museum because we're a nonprofit. So being a nonprofit means we have to ask our community of donors and supporters to help us out so that we can offer access programs to people who maybe can't pay for a ticket to come to the museum. So it really just helps to balance all of that out, which is really wonderful. And again, this community has been so supportive that we've been able to raise the funds that we need to keep this thing going and do lots of really cool events. So those are a couple of the events. I'm sure I'm missing something huge and somebody is going to listen to this later and yell at me for missing their favorite event. But those are some of them for you.
Yeah. The match event is pretty new, right?
Yeah, that is just over the last couple of weeks we've been doing it. It actually ends next Friday. So we are in the very last week of our match. So hoping to raise those last couple of dollars so that we get our donor to give us that big chunk of money and support the museum at its fullest capacity. So
And we can
exciting.
now advocate. So to all our viewers, probably by the time this comes out, there'll be still a week left.
Yeah.
Week left to process donations, help raise that final little bit of money.
I love it. Look at you. You're both an intern and a fundraiser for the museum.
I gotta get into my marketing career early.
Yes,
Can't wait those 2 months. So you mentioned there's some old projects you want to keep doing, more or less like a tradition, and then some new programs that are coming along. What would you say is something new you'd want to try, or something like an idea floating around in your head that you'd want to try?
So something I'd really want to do is bring in experts for kids to meet. So, I'd love to bring in like a veterinarian to come into the space and do a workshop where kiddos can bring their stuffed animals in, and the vet will show them what they do with the stuffed animals at the, at the vet's office, or having even just experts come in for new parents. I would love to have a new parent program where someone who's having their very first kiddo, as you can imagine, that would be a very scary thing, is having your first kid and not knowing all the things that go into that. And I would love for us to be able to be a resource for those parents and have, first parent classes where they maybe come into this space and they get to meet, folks in the community that provide other services for both their baby, but also for the adults. And when you're a first-time parent, sometimes all you need is just a couple of other people who are also going through the same thing. So
like that reassurance.
Getting some, other people that they can be like, oh, you're also a first-time parent. Maybe we can swap stories and make sure that we both don't feel crazy,
It's like that support system.
Exactly, building that in. So those are some of the things that we would love to start doing. And I would love to just even expand some of the things we are doing. Like right now we have our teen volunteer program, and that is only about 20 kids that are participating in that program. They come in cohorts and they work on the weekends here on the floor of the museum, and they teach activities. But I would love for that to be a much bigger program that has a lot more kiddos involved that are able to use this space as a place to learn if they want to be a teacher, or if they like working with kids, or maybe they really don't like working with kids and they learn that here. And that's a good thing to learn too. There's a lot of things that we're both doing that I want to make sure that we keep doing and do maybe bigger. And then there are things that we haven't had a chance to do yet that I hope we get a chance to do soon. So
yeah, it's nice to hear, especially with having such small, or at least having those ideas at the beginning, so you can slowly build on them. Especially like you mentioned, it's still somewhat new, so you'd still have those opportunities to make those big decisions, to make different things that might stick around and make new traditions in the future.
Exactly. And what's really cool is I am one of many, many people that, works here and cares about this museum. And so I have the least interesting ideas. There are so many other people on this team that have really creative, really cool ideas that can not only just change what we're doing here, but change how Modesto, some of the cool community events that we do in the community. So I think there's a lot that can be done, and some of it that I'm not even thinking of yet. Other people have those ideas.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see what sort of evolves from now.
Yeah, it's nice to always have that. Those different changes in our community, even as small as they can be, smaller events that could slowly blossom, bring people together, especially the bike and trike. It's really available to a lot of people, even if they're not advocate museum followers. They don't generally like that. Getting people to go out of their way to try things that are new. Maybe get more people in the community together.
And you don't even have to have kiddos to be in our bike and trike. We had some folks that are in the community and their kids are in college, and they came down and rode their bikes for the bike and trike. And, it's still it's just a fun day where you get to see the good side of community, what it looks like to be in community and support a really cool organization in ours. So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a lot of different programs that definitely make the museum stand out. But in your opinion, what would you say is one of or some of the key factors that make the Children's Museum stand out from a lot of other artistic small businesses or other locations around the city?
Totally. So I think something that is really unique about this museum is, first, it was, designed by world-class designers. We are so lucky to have worked with the designers we worked with. They are out of Oakland. Their name is Gyroscope. I recommend looking them up. They're wonderful people, but also just fantastic designers.
Yeah.
We also worked with really, really world-class fabricators. So those are the people that actually physically make all the stuff that's in the museum. So we are really lucky. I like to tell the story that this 2-story slide that you see in front of us here is actually was built in Poland and shipped all the way across the Pacific Ocean. Or sorry, well, I guess it could have been off over the Pacific, probably over the Atlantic though. But yeah, it came all the way from a different country to be here in this museum because it fits like a glove in this space. Everything is custom built for this space.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's really unique about what we're doing here is that everything built here was built with such high intention and really, really professional skills. And not to say other organizations in our community are not doing incredibly professional, wonderful work. But I think it's really a unique factor of this children's museum. For being the size that we are, we have really, really high quality exhibits, high quality experiences. And that's something we strive for all the time. And I think something that helps us stand out as well is that we are open 6 out of the 7 days a week. We are open a lot.
Yeah.
We try to be as open to the public as we possibly can be with our, the current staff that we have. So really trying to make sure that we have accessibility to all kinds of people that might be able to visit on different days. Parents who work on the weekends, they can still come during the week and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So just trying to make sure that we are really accessible and we are always working and striving to make that the group of people that are in this space wider and wider and wider. So I think those are some of the things that make us unique. And I think there's probably a million things I'm not thinking about, but those are a couple of my favorite.
Yeah, well, you mentioned how like a lot of things fit like a glove. A lot of things go really well together. Part of that to me, I think, is really the design of everything, the branding of a lot of it. It's really consistent and it's really recognizable. My question's kind of how was the creative process to sort of land and hone in on a specific color palette, design, all that makes the vision of the branding fit so seamlessly?
You can tell you're a marketing person. I love this. So I actually don't have a great answer for you because I was not here when those decisions were made. Those were made prior to me joining. But I do remember the first time I saw the logo, I was like, oh, that is a great logo. But I do know some of the people who were involved. So some of our original board members and our founders, a couple of them were particularly creative. They are creatives in our community still. The Foy family, shout out to the Foys. They are very creative people and have done a lot of creative work in a lot of different sort of mediums. And one of my favorite stories is Sunny, our mascot, who's here behind us. Sunny was actually created for Chelsie Foy. She's one of our founders. Created for her blog. She does a lot of content creation, does a lot of work on social and on blogs. And we don't really gender our mascot here. It's just a son. But Sunny was created for her blog. And when she got the artwork back, she was like, wow, I really love this sun. It just doesn't feel quite right for the work that she was doing on her blog. It was, a little more child friendly and her blog is, well, it's family focused. It's, it's about her, an adult woman. So, she went in a different direction, got a different sort of logo created, but she actually kept the rights to this sun. And so when they went to put together a logo, they were thinking about what should be our mascot, what should be our icon. And she was like, oh, I think I have it. And pulled this sun out of an old file and was like, I think that this sun could be a really great mascot for the museum. So it was really neat. It was almost like he or they or she was just sitting in the background somewhere, just waiting for their time to shine. Yeah. And the Children's Museum was the perfect place for Sunny to finally get their moment. So I think that's a really cool story. But something that I love is the design detail, which you've you've already pointed out, is actually there's so many really cool little moments. So I'll point you back to our donor wall over here. All of the shapes used around the donor wall are actually the shapes of Sunny's face.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, I've been told, and I really think it's so unique. It's not only just consistent, but the fact that it's bringing it like full circle all together. It's a nicely wrapped package. Like for someone going into advertising and PR and all that, it just makes me smile.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that as a guest, you may not notice that, but it does feel really consistent. It helps you feel like the experience is one experience, not many experiences all cobbled together, right?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, like you said, this is not just unique to our community, but it's like very special and distinct from other museums anywhere else. You can't just necessarily say that like it's any other generic museum when the branding is not only very consistent with the experience here, but it's very recognizable. And you can, if you grew up here, or even if you just come here for a visit, you can really remember whether it's Sunny or any of the colors you've seen.
Totally. And I think, the front of the building does a great job at really, you can't walk by the building and not know exactly what our colors are. And, we've made sure to make sure that there was, intention in the whole design. So that's why, again, working with the designers, Gyroscope, they did such a great job at incorporating our branding and colors all the way through our museum. So everything feels really cohesive, and there's a lot of intention. And then we do a really, we try really hard to make sure that that is true in all of the, social media that we put out into the world, and all of the, campaigns we design. We do it with intention that it all sort of ladders back up to our key brand, because we know how important it is to feel like things are connected to one another. And there's sort of this like undercurrent human language that understands that. But, if you're not in marketing, you might not be able to identify it or really point it out. But when there is that cohesion, it is something that is very, it feels really good. It feels good to the experience. And then it helps us because we often talk, we are a beautiful museum. That is, something that Mochimu is. We are a museum, but we are you saw it right as we got started. Brian, our director of education, just came back from an outreach program.
Yeah.
And he was also the Modesto Children's Museum out in that classroom, right? So him being able to take our branding and our logos and our shirt and all of those things out into the spaces outside of this museum helped to make this museum more of an idea than an actual physical space, right? We're more than just this building. We are all of the things that we're doing out in the community, and that branding is what ties us all together. So while I was not a part of any of the design's decisions, I'm so grateful for the decisions that they made, because it is a beautiful brand. It's a very recognizable brand, and it is something that I think is a huge asset to what we're doing. So I'm very grateful. Good job, design team.
On that note, following up, you've been here for a while. You've seen the place through a lot, and you make a lot of like major decisions that'll impact the outlook on how the community reflects on it. What would you say is one of like the biggest or key messages that everyone on board, including yourself, is trying to promote through any event, through any outreach program, through any donor supports? What message do you think the museum is trying to reflect on the community?
That is such a good question. So first and foremost, we're trying to deliver on our mission, right? We care a lot about our mission. We talk about it a lot. And the key aspects of our mission is that we want Mochimu to be for all children. And so that means we are trying our best to figure out all the different ways we can engage with all of the children. And all is a very big word, there's a lot of kids. So we're doing our best, but like, how do we get to people? How do we make our museum more accessible? How do we implement bilingual signage in the museum? How do we make sure that we are accessible to kiddos that are on the sensory spectrum? How are we doing all of these different things to try to build that in? So all children is huge for us. And then again, our mission states that we want to, nurture creativity, critical thinking, and a love of learning. So in every single experience that we have, we want it to be joyful, and we want you to leave going, wow, that was really fun. I love that. I want to engage with them again, right? Like that feeling of aha moments that kids have. So that's kind of critical. But we have like other values, and we have a big vision where we want to be, world class. I've talked a little bit about that. But one of our values is that we think that community is worth the investment. So we have seen the community invest in us, and we hope that the community continues to invest in us. But we believe that it is worth our investment into the community. So, we want to be at First Fridays, and we want to, just this morning, we hosted all of the Central Valley museums here in our museum to trade, hey, how are you guys doing this? And what does your procedure look like for that? And how do we, help each other out in our community? Because we think that community is actually one of the biggest strengths of both Modesto, but of doing something really well is doing it with others. So that's something when we are participating in an event, we want people to feel like we're showing up for them and investing in them. And we hope that then, at a later date, they'll want to do that for us. And we can, have that sort of community relationship that makes us sort of builds us all up bigger. So those are some of the things that when we're out at events, we want people walking away feeling like, hey, they're making learning fun. It's really accessible to lots of different people. And I see that they're putting the time in to invest in other community organizations in different communities. And I want to go invest in them. I want to go give them a visit. I want to go shop in their gift shop. I want to make a $10 donation to their matching campaign. Those are the, we want to feel that sort of connectivity to everybody else. Community. Yeah.
Well, with such a large organization and having so many things to do at once, how do you think you avoid both burnout, and what would you say keeps you motivated to keep persisting on these missions, keep persisting and delivering on the aspects you want to deliver in?
That is such a good question. And I will say I have been in burnout before, and I probably will get there at some point again. That's one of those things that as someone who is deeply motivated by work, I do a bad job at actually recognizing when I'm getting close to that burnout state. But it is something that we talk about a lot as a museum. We've actually we have some culture words that we say a lot to each other. And one of them is we're all humans first, right? Our guests are humans first. We as working people are humans first. So, if I can't show up as a human being, I'm probably not going to be able to show up and do my work very well. So ensuring that you're taking care of your person before you are like, a colleague to someone is really important. And so the way I try to do that for myself so that I can show up in a much better way is I am a master of nothing, but I have tried everything once. So, I've tried watercolors and photography and playing the guitar and learning how to crochet and all of those different things. I read a ton. I love reading. And it's not reading, for like learning. I'm like reading A Court of Thorns and Roses and the Harry Potter series and, all of the fun fantasy books out there. And, just trying to have interests that are not at all related to my work. And again, the goal is not to become an expert at any of those things. The goal is to just find new creative ways of expressing myself or spending my time using my brain in a way that is not at all related to the museum. Because then I can come back into the museum and have a much fresher perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then something else I love to do is learn. I love to learn. And I think that's why I love my job so much, because I get to try to get other people to love to learn, right? So I listen to podcasts about anything. You give me a good podcast, I will listen to it. I will be so interested in it. I will talk about it for 2 weeks afterwards. So I'm excited to be on your podcast today. But I love learning about other people's stories, about the way they see the world. One of my favorite podcasts is called Ologies, and it's all about different scientists and what they study. So it might be like a beeologist or a train conductorologist or whatever, anything. And you go into the episode going, what on earth could I want to know about moss? Like, moss has to be the most boring topic in the world. You get to the end of the podcast and you're like, oh my God, moss is so interesting, So those are the things that help me stay motivated in my work. It's by having a big life outside of work, right?
Hmm.
And finding harmony and balance in those things is always a journey. But I like to travel, so I'll take a week off and I'll go visit somewhere new. And that helps to, balance those scales when I spend too much time in the museum. But yeah, there's lots of fun things you can do to strike that balance. But I think that those are the things that kind of keep me at least farther from the edge of burnout,
Yeah. And I kind of like that methodology as well.
Good job.
Because, I feel like it's a universal human experience.
Yeah.
A lot of people experience burnout, whether they realize it or not. And even though you don't consider yourself a master of anything, I feel like mastering the idea of trying so many new things and just being open to learn things.
Novice, being comfortable being a novice. It is a really scary place for a lot of people to be new at something.
Yeah.
But if you get comfortable with that, you could do anything. So that's a huge thing for me, is like, let's try something new. I'm going to be bad at it. That's kind of the point when you're trying something new. But then, you can't get good at something without being bad at it first.
Yeah. I feel like, if anything, you're kind of a master of just trying new things in general.
I love that. I will take that.
It doesn't have to be anything specific. I feel like a lot of people have jumped between hobbies.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's just picking up something new because your friends like it, or just picking up
starting
something new.
podcasts, learning how to be a podcast host. I mean, that's huge. Starting internships, that's a scary thing. I never did that when I was your age, and I wish I would have. So I think that you're an example of how to do that and start it young, and then you'll be less scared of being like, oh, that job looks a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but go for it anyways, So I think that's great.
But despite it all, I really like how you view the world, in the sense, like learning new things and then projecting those new things onto like kids and hoping that they can gain that same love for curiosity and creativity and thinking beyond the limits of what's possible.
Totally.
And thinking of like new ways to view the world and a new outlook or new perspective.
Yeah.
That definitely a lot of kids, it's very beneficial to learn as young as possible.
Yes.
Because that's how they grow up. That's how they experience the world. And I just think that you and everything you've been doing throughout your life has just slowly been culminating into that one goal. And it's very admirable.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm very lucky. I think that, I think a lot of people don't get to wake up every day and love what they get to do. And I mean, mind you, some of my days are just like spreadsheets and budgets and, boring stuff. But, I am very lucky that I did not mean to end up in a museum career, but I accidentally did. And all of those pieces fell into place. And I am very lucky that I found a space where I feel both very comfortable and excited. And I know that is not true of every person. So I feel like I have it a little easier because I like what I do. So I get to grow up. I get to wake up every day and, go to work and be excited. And that is a huge hurdle for a lot of people. So I want to, at least put that out there, that I got very lucky also. So, finding your passion is not always something that everybody gets a chance to do. So I'm very lucky that I found both museums, but also the Modesto Children's Museum. This is a really special place, and it's cool to be a part of. So I'm glad you're also a part of it. You're in it now. You're one of us.
I'm in it for the long run.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending an hour talking to me.
Are you kidding? Thank you for interning and spending many hours with the museum. It's the least I could do, and I'm so glad to get to be a part of it. And I'm glad to be on my 209 journey, and I'm excited to hear all the things you all have to share about what else is happening out there in the 209. So keep it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So if you want to just look at the camera, tell the people at home what you're currently doing, what you plan on doing, anything new at the museum that you want to be promoting today.
Yes. Okay. So here's what's going on. At the end of this month at the Modesto Children's Museum, we have an adult night, which is 18 and up. It's swords, sorcery, and sci-fi, and it's going to be so fun. And then at the end of next month will be our bike and trike. We also have some special events that are upcoming next month, but I can't talk about them just yet. So make sure you're following along on our social media. You can follow us at Modesto Children's Museum. That's both on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. You can also sign up for our newsletter and be the first people to know what's going on here at the Modesto Children's Museum. And then if you've got little ones, our camp signups are happening right now, and there are scholarships available. So please apply for a scholarship if you feel like camp might be out of your budget, or sign up for camp if you feel like that's something that your family would be interested in. We've got, we've got a super science camp, a creativity camp, and some day camps happening over the summer. And that's happening all summer long from June to August. So lots of really cool stuff, and we can't wait to see you. See you soon.
Well, again, thank you, Chelsie, for being here. Thank you to everyone listening at home. Just a quick reminder, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram at The 209 Journey, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell so you can be here to listen to any upcoming stories that are recently happening and any future events that anybody may be having soon. So thank you.